This is why you should never open your door for strangers. In 2013, a woman let her dog out to use the bathroom one more time before bed. After only a few minutes, she starts hearing scratching on her door, which is typically the sound her dog makes when he's ready to come in. But it just seemed way too soon for him to be done being outside. So she decides to look through the peephole to make sure it really is her dog. But what she sees is terrifying. A deranged-looking man is right outside her door, staring intently at her door handle, waiting for it to turn open. As she's looking in horror, unable to do anything, he starts scratching at the door as hard as he can, never leaving his gaze from the door handle. She manages to stifle a scream, she backs away and realizes her dog is still outside. So she goes to the side window, but there's no sign of her dog, and so she goes back to the door to see if maybe the man's moved. He hasn't moved, his mouth is open, and he's staring directly at the peephole. Then he turns around and walks away. With the man gone, she discovers her dog unharmed, his leash had just been cut. But that means he had a knife.
Storytime about how I crashed my dad's really expensive car. So a little background information. My mom had just got remarried to my stepdad 3 years ago, and he was this rich asshole who owned a bunch of food trucks and thought he was the shit. Well, at the time I also had a boyfriend. And we had only been dating for like a month and a half. My boyfriend would always beg me to let him drive my stepdad's car. And I always said no because that was like his child. Like he had children. He could care less about them. His car was more important. Anyway, so the one weekend my parents are out of town and one of my friends was throwing a graduation party. So that whole day my boyfriend was trying to talk me into taking the car. And I already knew where my stepdad hid the keys. So I just decided I wouldn't drink that night and I would just take the car. He kept asking me if he could drive, but clearly I said no, because this kid literally told me that he crashed the first 2 cars that he had. So we get to the party, we're having a good time, and one of my friends tells me that everybody's taking pictures with my car outside. Like for part 2.
Storytime about the time a nail salon took advantage of my blindness. My sister and I got our nails done. We used to go all the time, and while the lady was doing my nails, she asked me how I knew how much money I had. At the time, I used cash, never again after this, but I told her that I folded my bills a certain way. I told her that I folded my 20s different than my 10s, different than my 5s, different than my 1s. Anything of her asking that question, I think it's a good question, and I just thought she was curious. I got done with my nails, she walked me towards the front, and my sister was actually just finishing up with hers, so it was perfect. There was another man at the front, and he asked me how I knew how much money I had. I told him the same thing. Before I left to go to the nail salon, I made sure exactly how much money I had. My sister helped me count it, helped me make sure that I folded the right bills, just so I knew how much I had, how much I would spend. I gave her the money. Positive that I gave her the right amount because it was just folded, it was folded perfectly, and I counted it out. She takes it, starts talking in a different language, and then tells me that I owe her $20 more. Or I didn't, and I told her the exact amount I gave her, and she's like, no, you didn't give me this amount, you gave me that amount. Like for part 2.
Part 2 about how I crashed my dad's very expensive car. So like I said, everybody's taking pictures of the car, but I decided to let it go at first. I mean, there was one point where I went outside just so that way I could kind of let everybody know, hey, you're taking pictures with my car. Well, half an hour later, my boyfriend and I decided to leave, and he's obliterated. Like, we probably got 50 feet from her house, and then I had to stop the car so that way he could get out and throw up in somebody's yard. Anyway, so he gets in the car, we're on the way back to my house. And my house was like a 20-minute drive away. Well, we were 5 minutes from my house. At this one intersection, I get a green light and I go to make a right, and I accidentally hit a car turning out of the bar parking lot. So I'm literally freaking the fuck out. And my boyfriend's in the seat next to me crying for some reason. So the guy in the other car calls the cops. The cops show up, they call my stepdad and my mom. My boyfriend went to the hospital, he had alcohol poisoning. Well, my boyfriend told his mom that it was all my fault and I'm grounded for 6 months. Story time about my psychotic best friend. So we're gonna call this girl Gia. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 9th grade. I saw Gia sitting at this lunch table alone and I invited her to come sit with my friends and I. And after talking to her, I found out that she was a new student and she didn't have any friends. So her and I started hanging out and we became really close. Like, she would come over my house 24/7. Well, my older sister was a grade above us and she would act really weird around her. And by weird, I mean like she would always make fun of me in front of my sister. And weirdly enough, try to cause problems between us. My sister didn't really like her. She thought that she was weird. But because she was my friend, she was being super nice to her. Well, like a month later, she started trying to become best friends with my sister. Like any conversation she would have, I would be like, oh, do you want to come over? She would be like, no, sorry, I'm hanging out with your sister today. And I would go home and I would be like, hey, are you hanging out with Gia today? And my sister would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like for part 2. Part 2 about my psychotic best friend. So like I said, my sister was like, no, what are you talking about? So at this point, I'm thinking, oh, this girl's really weird. But it gets even worse. She comes over my house one day to hang out with me and goes in my sister's room the whole time. My sister dyed her hair black, so what does she do? She dyes her hair black too. The obsession was like really fucking weird. Anyway, so the one night that Gia's over, yes, I still had her over after this because I didn't think it was really weird at the time. My sister had her boyfriend over and they were in the living room watching a movie, and the whole time Gia is begging me to go in the living room and watch the movie with them. So I'm like, fine, whatever, we'll do that. We go into the living room, we all sit on the couch, and my couch is kind of small, so like we all had to squish. So she sits her ass right next to my sister's boyfriend. Well, my sister's boyfriend got up and started freaking the fuck out. Well, turns out that Gia was trying to touch him under the blanket. So I told her to leave. The next day I got a whole paragraph of her saying that she just wanted to be like my sister because she never had an older sister.
Story time. I babysat a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and there was this one night that I was babysitting a 2-year-old. It was around 10 o'clock at night, so the kid was sleeping, and I was just sitting in the living room. In the living room, there was a big TV, a couch, and then behind me, it was a wall with a giant window. So it was really late at night, I had nothing to do, so I was Snapchatting my friends. If you Snapchat anybody, I'm sure you know that sometimes you Snapchat really fast. You don't even know or look at what you're sending. I was mass snapping all my friends, and then one of them replied 10 minutes later. And he said, "Who's that guy behind you?" And I turned around and no one was there, so I'm like, he's playing a joke on me. But then I get another Snapchat from this friend I had, and she lives all the way across the country. They don't know each other. And she said, "I think there's someone outside." So I was really freaked out because I was alone. There was a giant window behind me. Apparently there was someone outside. I wasn't gonna call the child's parents because I didn't want to freak them out, but I was scared. So then I went around the house, locked all of the doors. Sorry, it's a really long story, like for part 2.
Story time about how I was dating the school shooter. Yeah. So a little background information. I was a sophomore whenever this all happened, and it was around October. Well, the one day I was sitting at lunch with my group of friends. We're all sitting there having a good time when one of my friends dares me to go over and sit with this one kid. And he was sitting alone, he was kind of shy. And of course I did because they had offered me $10, guys. Can't beat that. So I go over there, we start talking, and I realize that he's actually really nice. And he's really hot. I never really saw what he looked like because he was always wearing hoodies during school. Anyways, we started hanging out more, and eventually he said that he liked me and we started dating. The relationship seemed pretty perfect. Well, 6 months in, I think he started to trust me more because he had told me about this one group of girls that he absolutely hated. This group of girls just happened to be my friends. I didn't tell him that I was friends with these girls because they were considered controversial, like for part 2.
I genuinely just cannot right now. Hold on. So, tell me why I'm at the Nelson. Dude, I got stuff to tell y'all. Oh my fucking God. So, let me tell y'all what did I just experience and why I'm so upset. So, I just decided to go to the nail salon because it's my day off and I had got paid or whatever. So, I'm going to the nail salon, mind you. I had to pee. So, I'm like, all right, can I go to the bathroom? Before they started doing that, so I'm like, yeah. Y'all, why the fuck did I see roaches crawling on a wall and I could not make this shit up? Y'all know I had to record, send that shit straight to my mom, my mom pick me up, but got to see it through, my boy.
If you've ever thought about getting your ears pierced, don't do what she did. This is the urban legend about a girl in Japan who tried to do it, then ended up with horrifying consequences. So this young girl really wanted to get her ears pierced. After some pleading with her parents, they finally agreed and gave her some money to go do it. But instead, the girl kept the money and decided to pierce them herself and let her friend help her. They heated up a large needle and went for it one day. It was painful, but in the end, she was happy she could finally wear earrings. However, this wouldn't last long. One day in school, she felt an intense pain in her left ear. Her earlobe was itchy, and by the end of the day, she had a headache. She went into the bathroom and saw her ear was very inflamed. Then she looked closer and saw a piece of white string sticking out of her new piercing. She picked and pulled at it, which only made the string longer. Now it was hanging out of her earlobe. The string seemed to be endless. The more she pulled, the longer it got. Finally fed up, she took a pair of scissors and cut the string. Suddenly, everything went black. There was a burning pain in her ears and her eyes. She began to scream. In the hospital, it was revealed that it wasn't a piece of string at all. She had pulled out a piece of her optic nerve and cut it. She would be blind for the rest of her life.
My sister and I have always been mistaken as twins. I'm 19 and she's 16, but we have the same height, skin tone, and similar voice. She also has a habit of being a copycat, from the way I dress to hobbies, even piercings. I know it's cute if you look at it from the outside, but sometimes it gets annoying. Like, yeah, we are quite close too, but why does she always happen to pick up everything I pick up? I have a 16-year-old babysitter who watches my 4 and 8-year-old. She watches my kids from 9 to 7 from Monday through Saturday, so I asked if she liked anything stocked up in the pantry or the fridge. She mentioned that she really likes seltzer water, and I bought them for the first month, but honestly, I forgot after a while and never kept any in the fridge. A few days ago, I bought hard seltzers for me and my husband and didn't think anything of it. While I'm at work, she messaged me to say if I can come home early because she's not feeling well. I asked her to try and hold out until the end of the day. Not too long after, she called me crying, saying that something was wrong and she had to go home. She was drunk clearly. She had drank the hard seltzers that were in the fridge. I told her to leave and she walked home. She called me the next day crying that she didn't know that the hard seltzers had alcohol in them. Both her parents were alcoholics and she was diagnosed with...
Has anybody else been in a really toxic relationship and never noticed it until after the fact? Because same. I thought I would give you some examples and see if anybody else could relate. So I was dating this boy. We'll call him Eugene. Eugene ended up going on a cruise with his friends. And at this point in our relationship, I never suspected that he was cheating on me. So this is really where the toxic started. He goes on his cruise, called me every single day, and then I went to his house the day he came back. He was changing his shirt and I noticed that he had a hickey on his neck. I was like, what is that? Because he was gone for over a week. Eugene says to me, yeah, you know, like I was sitting in the jacuzzi and like my boy pointed it out to me. It was like, yo, what is that? And I was like, yo, I don't know. Like, what the heck? Mia's gonna think this is a hickey. And I was like, okay. So we're watching a movie and he falls asleep. So I took that opportunity to look through his phone. And this was the first time that I ever thought to go through his phone. And I see that he has a streak with a girl. So I investigate, find her Instagram, and I DM her and I'm like, hey girl, I'm coming to you as a woman. How do you know Eugene?
Story time about my vacay. So I'm supposed to be going to Tahoe this Friday, but I just found out that there's a big fire out there, and the Airbnb we booked isn't allowing us a refund. My family lives out there, so I've been getting updates, but it's still scary. I'm praying everyone is okay. My cousin said it rained the other day, thank Jesus. I just hope it goes away.
This is why you should never stay in sketchy motels. In 2005...
Hope you guys liked this video and found it helpful. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. It does help support us, and let's know what videos you guys want to see.